Hello friends, very good evening. Welcome to the Hindu analysis by LTX classes. The article that we are going to look at first today is Reform Bail Law but Make the Right Diagnosis First. It is an editorial which appeared in the Hindu Delhi edition, page number 6. So it talks about reforming bail law. First of all, this article comes under General Studies paper 2 in your UPSC syllabus. It talks about reforming a bail law. Do we have a bail law? No. In India, we do not have a separate bail act or bail law. What we have today is broad guidelines given by Supreme Court. We do not have a separate bail law as of now. But UK has a separate bail act. Recently, Supreme Court in one of its observations mentioned that even India might need a separate bail legislation on the lines of United Kingdom. So before getting into that, so let's begin with some factual information. So look at this. Today, 75% of India's prison population are under trials. What is the meaning of under trial? Someone who is undergoing investigation, someone who is undergoing trial. What is the meaning of that? So the very important thing, the most important thing that you need to look at is a person can be in jail in two cases. One, as a convict. What is the meaning of convict? That means that the courts have declared the person as guilty. That means the courts have declared he has committed a crime because of which he has been put in jail. They can be put as a convict. They can also be put under jail as under trial, which means the trial is still going on. The case is yet to come to the court. The court is yet to deliver its verdict or judgment. In such cases, these under trials should have access to bail because it has not been proved, it has not been told or proved by the court that they are guilty of a crime. As of now, they are accused. There are accusations, there are allegations, there are charges of crime by the police, but that has not been validated by the court yet. Those people are called under trials. Ideally, they should have a recourse to bail. They should have an option to apply for bail. Whereas in other cases, these convicts, obviously the court has declared them to be criminals, so they have to be put behind bars. But in today's India, among all the prison population, 75% are under trials and only 25% are actual convicts. While overcrowding in Indian prisons stands at 118%. What does it mean? We are putting 118 prisoners in a place which can accommodate 100. So, a clear case of overcrowding. This is the current situation in India today. Recently, Supreme Court in Satyendra Kumar Antil versus CBI, it has acknowledged. What did it acknowledge? The ineffectiveness of India's bail system. India's bail system is ineffective because of which so many people are suffering as under trials in jails. The court noted that despite repeated guidelines on bail law, the court has given a lot of guidelines on bail law. Unfortunately, things have not changed much on the ground. On the ground, nothing has changed, and these people continue to remain in jails. Court provided comprehensive guidelines. They have mandated timelines for disposal of bail applications. But nothing has changed. Now it started emphasizing on the need to enact a separate bail legislation. Today we have under CRPC, under IPC, we have certain rules, and Supreme Court in various cases also gave some guidelines. These are the basis to decide whether to give bail or not. But we do not have any separate bail law as of now. There is no separate act for bail as of now, whereas in UK we have an act. In recent judgment, Supreme Court has mentioned it paid attention on this, and it has recommended the government to consider enacting a separate law for bail. Right? So it is asking us to honor the principle of presumption of innocence, and that bail, not jail, should be the norm. We need to honor this principle. What is that principle? Presumption of innocence. What is the meaning of this? In lot of movies we hear this statement, right? Everybody is innocent until proven guilty. Indian criminal justice system considers a person to be innocent until he was pronounced guilty by a court of law. Just because a person has been put in jail by the police officer, you cannot call him a criminal. He is a criminal only when the court declares him to be a criminal. Only when the court listens to arguments from the both sides and finally declares that he is guilty of a crime and he is a convict. Only then he is a criminal. Until then, he should be treated as innocent. The burden of proving his crime is on the police. That is the law that we have in India. And that is why we have this statement, bail and not jail should be the norm. We should try to give bail as much as possible and not put people behind bars. Bail should be the norm and jail should be the exception. Very important point. Bail should be the norm and jail should be the exception. That is Indian spirit of criminal justice system. That is Indian criminal justice system spirit. Unfortunately, is it happening? No, it is not happening. Now, the Supreme Court says, try to come out with a new legislation on bail. But the author of the article says, if you want to come out with a new legislation, if you want to come out with a new law on bail, you need to first understand the exact nature of the problem. What is the problem because of which so many people are struggling in jails? Why? Why is that so many people are struggling in prisons? We need to first understand. Let's first diagnose the problem. Diagnosis should happen first, and then you can start treatment. Without diagnosing, how can you start treatment? So let's try to understand the problems that we have with respect to bail system, and then we can think about coming out with a new law. Further, the author is saying you need to look at these questions. What proportion of under trials are applying for bail? Out of every 100, how many are actually applying for bail? And what proportion of bail applications are accepted or rejected, and on what grounds? Of all the applications, how many are accepted and how many are rejected? And if you are rejecting, on what grounds? Is bail compliance a far bigger problem than denial of bail? Bail compliance is a far bigger problem than denial of bail. Another issue. What is the meaning of denial of bail? Someone is applying and you are denying. What is bail compliance? You are giving bail, but he has to comply with the norms that you are putting in. So we need to understand which one is a bigger problem. Is denial of a bail is bigger problem, or compliance of bail is a bigger problem? We need to look at all these things and then come out with a legislation. That's what the author is saying. The author is also saying, once you ask all those questions, once you come out with all the answers, you need to correlate all these answers, right, with other variables such as demographics of under trials. What is their age? Where are they from? What is their profession? And category of offences and timelines for bail, and also address socio-economic and structural barriers. This is a very important point. You need to underline this. There are some socio-economic and structural barriers. There is a saying in India, tell me your name, tell me who you are, I will tell you the law. Indian law is not the same for everyone. Although we have the concept of rule of law, equal protection of law, equality of law, all of them are there in theory, but in practice, do we have it? The law is different for different people. For a poor person, a law is different. For a rich person, the law acts in a different manner. That is the problem we have in India. That is the reason we need to address socio-economic and structural barriers in application of bail law. Even for applying, you need to have a family background, you need to have some money, you need to have connects with lawyers, you need to have so many things. Unless you have these things, you will not be able to apply for a bail, you will not be able to comply with the conditions of bail. So when you are coming out with a new law, you must also consider all these socio-economic and structural barriers. Barriers means obstacles. Currently, the foundations of current bail law ensure that it is anti-poor. We do not have a separate law, but the guidelines that we have for bail law are anti-poor. They are not friendly for poor, and it disproportionately burdens those from marginalized backgrounds. Right now, it is not in favor of poor, it is completely against poor, it is burdensome for these marginalized communities. So that is the reason whatever solutions we intend to craft in a new law must be based on a deep and realistic understanding of the problem. Are you getting this? We need to look at structural, socio-economic aspects. We should look at all the barriers to bail law today and then decide what to do next. Very, 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 very important. Without understanding the problem, without understanding the gravity of the problem, let's not go ahead and create a new law. Let's first understand the gravity of the situation. Let's try to understand that problem from all dimensions and only then come out with a new bail legislation. The next thing is lack of safeguards. Lack of safeguards. So what is the meaning of this? So there are two aspects. First thing, you are arresting someone and there is this issue of bail coming into picture. What if it is not easy to arrest and the person has enough safeguards? If the person has enough safeguards that helps him avoid arrest, you will not have the problem of bail, right? You don't even have to worry about bail. If you have enough safeguards that protect you from arrest, you do not have any issues. Unfortunately, the court is saying the same thing. The court is saying effective enforcement of safeguards. Our fundamental rights give us some safeguards against arbitrary arrest. Arbitrary means without any reason, without any logic, without any sound justification. If police arrests, you have certain safeguards today in our judicial system, in our constitution. If you effectively enforce those safeguards, it would eliminate the need to seek bail. If you are not even arrested, you don't need to seek bail, right? That problem is already eliminated. That is what the court is saying. Let's try to enforce all the safeguards that we have today. But unfortunately, even these safeguards exclude a significant proportion of arrested persons, especially those from disadvantaged sections of society who form the large majority of under trial prisoners. Because these disadvantaged sections, they do not have recourse to lawyers, they do not have enough income, most of them don't even have a strong literate family. They don't even know what is there in the constitution. They don't even have a person who can come and speak on behalf of them. Unfortunately, all these things are not available. These safeguards are theoretically available, but in reality, they are not available. In public administration, we call it constitutional formalism. You need to know all these concepts. What is constitutional formalism? There are many things which are in theory. Many fundamental rights are there in theory, but in practice, in reality, if they do not exist, if there is a gap between theory and reality, we call the gap as constitutional formalism. In a country, if this formalism is more, that means that the gap between theory and reality is more. We might have 100 things as part of our constitution, but in reality, if they are not being implemented, if they are not accepted, then we have this issue of constitutional formalism. That is what we have in India today. There are so many things in book. Unfortunately, none of them actually work in reality, especially for poor and marginalized communities. That's what the author is saying. So look at the next statement. For example, the arrest of a person is justified as necessary when, if police have reasons to believe that it is required to ensure their presence in court. If the police have reasons to believe, it is a very vague justification. If you are giving such vague justifications, the police can use these such things and arrest anybody they want. And especially migrants, people with no assets, people with no contact with family, they are at higher risk of arrest because of their socio-economic conditions. There is no one to fight on behalf of them. There is no one to come and fight for them. How will they come out? They have lot of barriers. So the author of the article, he is from this particular fair trial program. So they did some survey. They went to this jail in Erwada and Nagpur, right? Of the under trials in these two prisons, how many of them? 2,313. Represented by FTP, this program, 18.5% are migrants. 93.48% did not own any assets. Very important point. And 62.22% did not have any contact with family. Look at this, they did not have any contact with family. And 93.48% they did not have any assets. They have nothing. And 10% had a history of previous incarceration, which means previously also they were put in jail. 10% had this history. So what can we say? What can we say? So these poor people, they do not have enough protections. Most of them, most of the people who is undergoing trial are poor people, because 93% they do not even have any assets. People who have assets, people who have access to money, family and other resources, they are somehow able to get bail. But those who do not have access to all of them are unable to even apply for bail. This is the problem that we have in India today. Now, the author also talks about another aspect. What is this? Approach to bail adjudication. What is the meaning of this? Whenever a bail application comes to a judge, what is the approach the judge is normally taking? We need to understand the problem. See, ultimately, only when you understand the ground level problems, you can come out with a law which is covering all these problems. Now, let's look at this second issue that we have today. So, who has the power to grant bail? Obviously, it is the court's discretion. The court has a discretionary power. It can decide whether to grant bail or not, depending upon the facts of each case. Supreme Court, obviously, it has laid down certain principles. It has laid down certain principles for granting bail. Like in deciding bail applications, it has given certain principles. These principles stress upon the need to release applicants on bail. Very, very important. Bail is the norm. Bail is the norm and jail is exception. So, ideally, we should always try to release people on bail. Only in exceptional cases, we should not release them. Unfortunately, although Supreme Court stresses upon the need to release applicants on bail, they also validate denial of bail. It doesn't mean you cannot deny. Yes, you can deny bail. You can also impose onerous bail conditions. Onerous means too difficult. Things which are very difficult to comply. Sometimes you might get a bail, but the conditions are very difficult to follow. Just because you are unable to follow those conditions, you will continue to remain in jail. So these are the issues that he is talking about. So courts have an option to deny bail. They can also impose onerous bail conditions based on the gravity of the offence. Based on the gravity means seriousness of the offence, the courts can decide whether to grant bail or not. What is the other aspect? The likelihood of the accused absconding or tampering with evidence. If the accused absconds, if the accused is likely to tamper with the evidence, if he influences witnesses, tampers evidence, if he is likely to flee means escape from justice, in such cases you can deny bail. But most likely you are supposed to, you should try and give bail. That is the norm given by Supreme Court. Unfortunately, all the courts that we have in India, they rarely exercise their discretion for granting bail. They are not using the discretionary power. Discretionary power means ability to decide on their own. That discretionary power, they are not using it for granting bail, and they are mostly taking the stringent approach towards release on bail, which means they are mostly denying bail or imposing onerous conditions. Despite Supreme Court guidelines, courts are not recording reasons for rejecting bail. They are not even recording reasons. They are not even recording reasons for rejecting bail. The rationale behind how courts factor in offense-based and person-based considerations remains unclear. If a court is rejecting a bail application, it is not giving reasons in a proper manner. Why you are rejecting? What is the reason that you are denying bail? The courts are not recording reasons. That is another problem we have today with respect to adjudication of bail application. Look at this. Today's bail conditions have cash bonds, surety bond, proof of property ownership, and solvency. All of them are related to money. Sometimes they say you have to give a bond for 1 lakh rupees or 50 lakh rupees. You have to give your property papers. If someone doesn't even have any money, if someone doesn't even have a property of his own, how can he comply with such conditions? These are the things which are commonplace. Commonplace means which are quite common, quite normal, quite usual. Unfortunately, it is at odds with the reality of under trial prisoners languishing in jails. Under trial prisoners are, majority of them are poor. We have seen it, right? We have seen it. 93.48% did not own any assets. 62.22% did not have any contact with family. If that is the case of the under trial prisoners we have in India today, how can they comply with such conditions? That is the reason whenever you are coming out with a new law, consider the case of these absolutely poor people and come out with a legislation which considers the needs of these people. So that is the reason they are talking about challenges in bail compliance. You are giving so many rules and regulations, and there are so many challenges in complying with bail. Look at this. Lack of means to arrange money. If you don't have money or property, if you don't have surety, you will not be able to comply. You will not be able to comply with bail condition, and you will have to continue to stay in jail. You will have to continue to stay in jail. And look at this. Lack of residence, identity proof, abandonment by family, limitations in navigating the court system also undermine an under trial's ability to comply with bail conditions. That is what we are trying to understand today. And this, look at these figures. The author says in their experience, 14% of cases of under trials were unable to comply with bail conditions. They remained in prison despite being granted in bail. Very important. They were granted bail, but they continued to remain in prison because they were unable to comply with bail conditions. First aspect. Second aspect, in 35% of these cases, it took over a month after obtaining the bail for under trials to comply with bail. So there is a person, out of every 100, 14 could not comply with bail conditions, and 35 they are able to comply after a month, after 1 month, which means even after getting bail, they continue to remain in bail for 1 more month. Only then they are able to comply with conditions, and 14% are unable to comply with conditions. If the court is asking you to give a surety of 50,000, if that person doesn't even have any assets, what can he do? He cannot do anything. And finally, it talks about flawed assumptions. What are the assumptions? Look at this. What are the flawed assumptions? That every arrested person is a propertied person. Every person has access to propertied social connections. We are making such flawed assumptions. And it also presumes that the risk of financial loss is necessary to ensure presence of the accused in court. Only if there is a risk of losing money, he will come and attend. These are the assumptions that we have, and all these assumptions are completely flawed. And these assumptions, these rules are against poor and marginalized communities. These assumptions are completely against poor and marginalized communities. Finally, this is the conclusion the author is giving. For any bail law to effectively provide relief, a careful re-evaluation of the said assumptions or presumptions is imperative. We need to re-evaluate these presumptions based on which current guidelines are framed. So we need to reform the guidelines based on deeper understanding of the assumptions. There is an urgent need for bail reform, but it would be counterproductive to undertake a reform exercise without first developing the empirical basis to understand and diagnose the problem. So let's first understand the problem, diagnose the problem, and confirm it with empirical data. Empirical data means data that you can observe. For example, these people went to Arawada jail. They took the data. Based on that physical data, they are coming out with all these recommendations. They are not blindly coming out with the recommendations. They are asking us to diagnose the problem and analyze on empirical basis, and only then you come out with a new bail law. That is what the author is trying to say. It's a beautifully written article. He has connected the problem of poor and marginalized community with respect to bail reform. The second article of the day is about monkeypox. Again, an editorial which appeared in the Hindu Delhi edition, page number 6. So before getting into the article, I will give you some basic information about monkeypox. So monkeypox was first discovered. So we need to understand certain basic factual information also about monkeypox. It was first discovered in 1958 in Denmark among a colony of monkeys. That is the reason it was given a name monkeypox. It was first discovered in Denmark. It is a zoonotic disease, which means it gets transmitted from animal to animal, animal to human, human to animal. Transmission happens in this manner. And in people, in humans, it appeared for the first time, it was discovered for the first time in 1970 in Democratic Republic of Congo. It appeared for the first time in Democratic Republic of Congo in Africa. Since then, this disease of monkeypox remained endemic, very, very important. It remained endemic in Central Africa and West Africa. It remained endemic in Central and West Africa. Central and West Africa. What is the meaning of endemic? That means its presence was limited to these two areas. It did not spread the entire globe. It remained endemic, it remained confined to these two places. That is the meaning of this particular aspect. Now what happened now? What happened today? So in May 2022, on May 6, 2022, a case was reported in UK. I've just told you that it was endemic, it was confined to Central and West Africa till now. But on 6th May 2022, a case was reported in UK, and then it got spread to 63 countries. Now WHO had to react. WHO had to react, and 14,500 cases are there today across the globe. So WHO has declared it as PHEIC. What is the meaning of that? Public health emergency of international concern. Public health emergency of international concern. What is the meaning of this? It means it constitutes a public health risk through international spread of disease. It is a public health risk that also includes international spread of disease. So what should the governments do? What should people do? WHO recommends that it requires immediate two keywords and international, immediate and international response. Not just one country or two countries. We need to have a coordinated and international response, which means all the countries must support each other, must share information, must help each other in terms of vaccines, doses and information etc. That is the meaning of declaring PHEIC, a disease as declaring PHEIC. So let's look at some salient points mentioned here. So this is the second, this happened for the second time. What was the first one? COVID-19, we all know about it. And PHEIC is just one step short of a pandemic classification. Pandemic is the highest level emergency and PHEIC is just one step below pandemic classification. So some more facts about monkeypox. You can see it has more visible manifestations such as rashes and blisters, and is said to be overrepresented in men who have sex with men. In gay community, people who are having sex with other men who are having sex with other men. Among that community, it is spreading rapidly. So this spreads through human contact, person to person contact, especially among gay community it is being spread. And it is also fatal only among people whose immunity is compromised. Whoever has a very poor immunity, for them it is fatal, otherwise it is not that fatal. Then what should the governments do? Governments must step up surveillance. They must step up surveillance. They must amplify public awareness campaigns. They have to make sure public know about this particular new disease. They should work towards not stigmatizing the disease. We should not stigmatize it. We should not treat a person with monkeypox as inhuman. We have to treat them in a humane manner. We should not treat them as people of lower standards. We should not we should not make it affect their dignity or self-respect. Let's not stigmatize it. The governments must ensure it is not stigmatized. And health infrastructure of India should be prepared. What is the meaning of primed? Primed means be prepared towards producing diagnostic kits. These are the recommendations World Health Organization is giving to India and other countries. And finally, there is another salient point. Indian labs and biotech companies, they must step up research. All these companies should be ready. They should step up research and then get ready with adequate defenses. Defenses means your vaccines, medicines and all these things. Don't wait. Come out with medicines, come out with vaccines. So all the pharma companies must focus on this. All the health infrastructure that we have, be ready with diagnostic kits and other health infrastructural aspects. Let's not waste time. We have already learnt a lesson from handling COVID-19. Let's apply the lessons learnt to handle this monkeypox. That is the final thing that we need to understand in this particular article. The third article of the day, so this is Hindu Explainer, something under text and context column, which falls under your Science and Technology GS paper 3. GS 3. This comes under General Studies paper 3. The private sector boost in India's space industry. So what is this? Let's look at this particular article in a detailed manner. So what are they talking about? So they are referring to development in space sector from private sector. Why is it important? Enhancing space technology would be beneficial to bolster connectivity and combat climate change implications through a more secure and effective means. First of all, why we need development in space sector? Two aspects. The article refers to two aspects. One, to bolster connectivity. The other one is to fight climate change related implications. Two aspects to it. Let's look at it in a detailed manner. All these explainers come with a detailed explanation, so we just need to go through it and understand. Look at this. Satellites provide more accurate information on weather forecasts and they also assess long-term trends in climate and habitability of a region. Very, very important point. They will give information on weather forecast. They will also help us understand long-term trends in the climate. Weather is something that we observe on a daily basis, and climate is something that is over a period of time. For example, the climate of Kashmir is cold. When I say the climate of Kashmir is cold, I don't mean it is cold today. It is generally cold. Over the last 20 years, 30 years, if you look at all the temperatures recorded there, it is pretty less. That is the reason you call it a cold climate region. And weather is a daily phenomenon. How is the weather today? Is it hot? Is it sunny? Is it rainy? So weather is something that we forecast on a daily basis. Climate is a long-term trend. So satellites help us in both aspects, in establishing climate trends as well as weather forecasts. Right. For example, by monitoring long-term impact of a climate change at regional, territorial and national levels, government would be able to devise more pragmatic, means practical and combative plans of actions for farmers and dependent industries. When you know how the climate in a particular region is, you can tell farmers or you can tell industries what to do. Only when you know this information, you can guide them in a proper manner. Similarly, since you are able to track weather in an accurate manner, we will be able to give lot of early warning solutions against natural disasters such as earthquakes, tsunamis, floods, wildfires. In all these things, early warning is very important. If you are able to warn the victims early, they can vacate, they can save their lives. So that way, it helps a lot of people. So we looked at the climate and weather aspect. The other aspect is connectivity. Even in terms of connectivity, satellite communication helps a lot because it can help us reach more remote areas where conventional networks would require a heavy complementing infrastructure. If you are going with a conventional infrastructure, it is very difficult in especially hilly areas and other areas. It's very difficult to build this physical infra. But with satellite communication, it becomes quite easy. And World Economic Forum had recently stated that satellite communication can help connect 49% of the world's unconnected population. So, satellite communication, which is generally used to facilitate telecommunication services, are among major categories for investment in space technology services, space technology sector. One is connectivity, the other is forecast. Look at this. This is connectivity. The other one is climate related implications. These are the two areas we use satellites in a broad manner. But if you look at India, where are we in global space market? According to this particular analytics, India is currently 6th largest player. Who is number one? Obviously, United States. 56.4%. India has around 3.6% of world's space tech companies market. So we don't need to look at all that information. The another information that we are interested today in this article is this startup ecosystem in ISRO, our space system. Today in India we have 60 odd startups which are registered with ISRO. A majority of them, very important point, pay attention here, a majority of them are dealing in projects related to space debris management. What is debris? Look at this. As space becomes more congested with satellites, they generally collide and they become junk. That is called space junk or space debris. So here you need to know one phenomenon called Kesslers Syndrome, very important from exam point of view. Kesslers Syndrome. So what is Kesslers Syndrome? With a lot of junk in space, let's assume there is this lot of space junk. So old satellite, dead satellite, something that is non-functional, we call it junk. So with this junk, it also rotates, right? It also rotates in the Earth's orbit. Let's assume this junk hits an active satellite. What will happen? It damages it. it damages. Once it is damaged, it also becomes junk or debris. So one junk has created another junk, and this will create more junk, and this will create more junk. This way a domino effect sets into motion. One junk satellite collided with an active satellite, created more junk. Now two junk satellites collide with more satellites, active satellites, and create more and more junk. And this phenomenon is called Kesslers Syndrome. More and more space debris will be created, space junk will be created, which causes a lot of problems for active running satellites and astronauts and space mission planners. This is a very, very important aspect, very, very big problem that we are facing today. And I also need to tell you one more thing called Project Netra related to this. Project Netra, the full form of Project Netra is Network for Space Objects Tracking and Analysis Project. Tracking and Analysis Project. This is called Project Netra. What is this Project Netra? Project Netra is a early warning system. What does it do? What does it do? It detects the debris. It detects space debris and warns us. It warns ISRO. It gives a warning to ISRO about the location of debris in the space, and it tells Indian satellites the risk with them, the hazards with them. That is why we call it space situational awareness. We need to know where is this junk located, where are our healthy satellites located, is there a risk to our satellites, active satellites, because of that junk, how far are they from us, how likely are they to collide the active satellites. So we need to have this awareness. We call it space situational awareness. All the big economies, world economies like US and all, they already have this kind of infra in place. Now India is also coming out with this Netra project to create space situational awareness to help avoid this Kesslers Syndrome. Kesslers Syndrome. So this is very, very important from your exam point of view. So most of the Indian startups are currently working in space debris management. How much is India allocating for space? FY 22-23 budgetary allocation stands at 13,700 crores. 13,700 crores. And for space sector startups, there is a funding of $67.2 million, which got tripled compared to 2021. So funding into space sector startups is going up, which is a good sign. Government's allocation is also decent enough, but not much compared to America or other developed economies. Now we are talking about private sector's participation in space sector. But how are we going to regulate this? Whenever private sector gets into picture, it is important to regulate. For regulation, the government of India announced a lot of reforms in 2020. It has announced the establishment of InSpace, very important, Indian National Space Promotion and Authorization Center. And what is the objective of InSpace? It has the mandate of promoting, authorizing, and licensing private players to carry out space activities. If a private player wants to carry out a space activity, it must approach InSpace, right? It will give the license, and it also acts as an oversight mechanism, which means it will also oversee what these private players are doing after getting license. It also regulates their actions. It is responsible for devising mechanisms to offer sharing of technology, expertise and facilities free of cost to promote non-government private entities. To promote these private entities, InSpace helps them with technology. See, look at ISRO. ISRO has government funding of thousands of crores. So it has already developed a lot of technology. Now we cannot expect the private player to come and develop the same technology again. That is the reason government is coming out with this kind of help, where it offers technology, it offers expertise, it also offers the facilities of ISRO for free of cost if it is feasible to these private companies. So in spaces, Monitoring and Promotion Directorate oversees NGPE, non-governmental private entities activities as per prescribed regulations and reports back in case of any corrective action or resolutions are required. Right? So that is about, and ISRO also shares its expertise in matters related to quality, reliability protocols, documentation, testing. So ISRO has already developed a lot of technology. ISRO has already developed a lot of procedures. So ISRO helps them in by sharing all that it has already developed. And there is another organization that was constituted in 2019, which is New Space India Limited. From prelims point of view, this is also important. It is mandated to transfer matured technologies developed by ISRO to Indian industries. Look at this. All the technologies which are already developed by ISRO, they are transferred to Indian industries, and it is mandated to do that. All of them come under the purview of Ministry of Defense. So why are they encouraging private sector to all this? In future, if you are encouraging private sector, apart from government, even private sector will also start investing. They might come out with a better technology. They might see, only government working in field is one thing, and if the private sector also joins hands and government helps them initially, we can achieve much more in space technology. And one more important thing is, this space technology is generally linked to telecommunication and IT, because we need a lot of IT products and communication. Space is generally used for communication, right? So it has this spillover effect. When you're investing a lot of money in space, it will help IT, it will also help telecommunications as well. When private sector also gets into the system, even if government doesn't have funding for certain things, and private sector, if there is commercial viability, they will also invest a lot of money into this. So this is the final idea. The central idea was to bring forth a predictable policy. Now the government is planning to come out with a policy and a regulatory environment for this private sector, and additionally provide access to ISRO facilities and assets to improve their capacities. So initially they might require access to ISRO's facilities and capacities, and the government is ready to help them with all of that. So this article is a simple and easy article. So things that we have learned is Project Natra. It is not mentioned here. Kesslers Syndrome. These are the things you have learned today. And you have also learned what is this debris, space debris. And these organizations, NSIL, the other organization in space. You need to know what each of them does, right? So that's about it. So let's catch up again tomorrow. Share your feedback in the comment section. Take care. Bye bye.